Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Karim Berkouk from the European Commission, and I will speak today about what we do in research for pain. This morning you have heard from DG Santé, the Santé perspective, and now you will see what we do at in the research and innovative perspective. I'm the Deputy Head of Non-Communicable Diseases and the Challenge of Healthy Aging in Research and Innovation. So non-communicable diseases. This is the biggest challenge in Europe. I think 86% of the deaths in Europe are due to non-communicable diseases. And why it is so such a burden is because they are chronic. Compared to the past where we had infectious disease, there were acute events, now we have chronic diseases. What it means in practice is that once you have one, you're likely to have it for the rest of your life. And with the management of chronic diseases comes the pain that you will have to manage for the rest of your life. On top of that, the society is aging, and the more you age, the more you have chronic diseases. So the burden on the healthcare system is going to be tremendous. When you add to that the fact that recently the cost of drugs and vaccine has dramatically increased, the healthcare system won't be able to cope with that. I will also mention the fact that we have inequalities. It was also mentioned this morning. And the inequalities are not only between countries, not even between regions, but even within cities. We can see that across quarters in a city where you have a real health inequalities. So these are the overall challenges that we face when we develop our research programs. How do we develop our research program? We have the framework program, which is called Horizon 2020, and this is the financial arm of the Commission for Research. It is the third budget after agriculture and cohesion fund or structural fund, with 80 billion euro for 7 years. This is the 8th program. The first one was back in the early 80s. And it is structured around 4 big pillars that are presented in the slide here. The excellent science pillar with 24 billion euro. And then you have the industrial leadership with 17 billion, and the societal challenges where the health research sits. And it has a budget of 31 billion. What I want to insist, and maybe one of my take-home messages, is that health is not only in the health societal challenge. If you look at the first pillar, excellent science, it has 4 subcategories. All of them are bottom-up. What I mean by bottom-up is that the Commission doesn't decide the topic where to fund research. It's up to the applicants. They can do literature, history, life, pain, whatever they want. They will be evaluated, and if they are among the top ones, they will be financed. So there is no prescription of the type of research that you can do. And on top of that, you have calls where you can apply for proposals every year. So even if you fail in 1 year, you can get the reviews from the reviewers and try to improve for the next year. So in this excellent science, you have 4 categories. The European Research Council, which is a kind of external body led by scientists, and they define the topics. It's bottom-up. They call it, if you want, the Champions League of research. You have all the big people in Europe in that. Then you have the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions, where the aim is more for training and mobility within Europe and outside, but also training and career development in order to get the best skills and advance in your career. You have the future and emerging technologies, and there it's more for risky ideas that usually do not get funded under other type of program, because sometimes the evaluators are quite conservative. And then you have research and infrastructures. And these are big infrastructures where we collect MRI, medical imaging, biobanks, this type of data which are collected at European level. In the second pillar, industrial leaderships, you have mainly ICT and manufacturing science. But however, we have also an instrument which is on small and medium enterprises, and there about a third of the budget is dedicated for health-related research. And I will show you after examples of what was financed in this area in pain research. And also I want to say that lately we are moving a kind of away from traditional grants, and we are going more and more to loans, a new type of loans that we didn't used to do. The idea of the loans is that if somebody has an idea which is very risky, we have schemes like we will lend you the money, and if you are successful, you give it back. If you are not successful, the Commission will pay. So we're trying to take all the big risk out of the small companies so that they can develop themselves. And then you have the societal challenges, and I will now focus on that, where we sit. Sorry, I have. And one of the main, the biggest challenge is the health, demographic change, and well-being, and that's where I work personally. So in these challenges, we are investing in collaborative research. Collaborative research is really a hallmark of EC research. It started more for political reasons when they wanted to put together researchers from many countries, but it ended up as being one of the best way of carrying out research, and now it's copied a bit everywhere, because it allows to tackle multidisciplinary, in a multidisciplinary way, very complex challenges, such the one of pain. So with this collaborative research, what we are trying to do is really translate science to clinics. Very often, lots of the new ideas they are developed, but they don't come to the clinic. And we're trying to boost this area. We also test new modern approaches, promote healthy and active aging. We also partner with the industry on some collaborative research. And also we provide the evidence base for best health policies development. We think that it's the normal way of doing, but it's not the case very often. Many of our policy-making decisions, they are not really based on evidence, and we're trying to provide those evidences. How does it translate for pain research? Basically, what we try to do with our research is to answer those two questions. How pain is generated, and can this process be prevented, halted, modulated, or even reversed? And also we insist a lot about the chronification of pain and how it begins and how it progresses. And with research, what we are trying to do is to understand the underlying mechanism in order to after develop preventive, diagnostic, and treatment options. To be more specific, we try to identify biomarkers, brain circuitries, and other neurobiological mechanisms that trigger the pain, establish faster and more reliable diagnostic tool, as well as identifying high-risk patients, potential drug targets, and eventually to predict the treatment response to whatever intervention that we propose. Sorry. Oops. To answer those research questions in pain, we have developed cross-cutting policy activities, if you want. The first one is on personalized medicine. What we mean by personalized medicine is that we're trying to develop a medicine which is more based on data than symptoms or feelings. That's what we're trying to do. The data can be generated from genetics or physiological, psychological, biopsies, etc. But try to find a medicine which is more based on those data. The aim is not to find a therapy for each patient. The aim is really to better stratify the people to be able to find better cure for them. And for the moment, we are developing an agenda with the member states to align our efforts in this area. I remind you that, okay, the 80 billion seems like a big amount of money, but this represents about 5% of the research spending in Europe. The 95 other persons are in the member states. And one of the main aim of these activities is to move really the personalized medicine from the research area to clinical practice and see and show the value of it. I know that many people see it as the medicine of the rich, but what we are trying to show there is that by giving medicine to only the people that need it, we will be able to save money. For instance, we had probably one of the first big trials in cancer, where it shows that if you were giving the treatment based on the certain genetics, in 47% of the case, chemotherapy was useless. So you can imagine the quality of life of the patient, but also the saving that you can make with a genetic test, which is about 2,000 euro or something like that. So yes, it will need investment, but we think, and we have to demonstrate it, that we can also save money to healthcare system. The second point, overarching point that we are developing is the big data. We have talked this morning a little bit about big data. Nowadays, we generate lots of data from many purposes to address some specific questions. For instance, we have the human biomonitoring initiatives, where we try to assess the impact of the exposure to chemicals in terms of health. With the personalized medicine, we have lots of omics data. We are now more and more generating data from the real world. And there I would like to insist on what was said a bit this morning, that research is very sequencing. It's hypothesis, experiment, then I test it, and then I go maybe to clinical trials, and then eventually it goes to the patient. But once it's with the patient, it stays there. And with real-world data, we hope that this data can feed back the research and see how we can monitor and improve the whole process. So it will be a constant interaction between real data and research. But it's not enough maybe to have those data that were developed for a specific focus. What we are trying to do now is how we can combine those data, cross them around many sources of data and bring them together. And we have an ambitious project now, which is called the European Science Cloud, where we want to put, at least at the beginning, all the data from our projects, and there are lots of data from those 80 billion euro. We want to bring them in a cloud, so that people will be able to access them and try to standardize them so that they can speak to each other. It's very ambitious. I don't know how we will manage to achieve that, but at least we have this ambition. And the last overarching issue that we're trying to develop is a patient-centered approach. Remember that I've read, like a few years ago, a survey or study where they ask physicians and researchers, what is the one thing that you're trying to achieve when you are managing a patient? And the physician and researchers were saying, 8 out of 10 were saying, I want to find a cure for this disease. And then they ask to the patients, what is the one thing that you would like to have while you're being managed by the clinicians? And again, 8 out of 10 people said, manage my pain. There is a discrepancy between the goals of the researchers and the goal of the patients. So we are trying to see how we can more align those expectations from the two perspectives. And that's why we involve more and more patients in the policy design while we are defining our topics. For instance, in our advisory group that help us find the topics where we will invest money, we have a representative from the European Patient Organization. We organize many workshops. We take on board the recommendations like the one that you have issued this morning. And our I think topics are much more centered, patient-centered than before. We try to see from the patient point of view what is likely to be more impactful for him. And on top of that, they are participating a lot also in our project. Compared to 10 years ago, where a patient organization in an EU project was the exception, now I would say that it's almost in half of them, or even more than half of them, that patient organization participate. And they are very complementary to the researchers. I can say that even in evaluation, sometimes we can see some proposed ideas by researchers that really patients do not want even to participate in such a clinical trial. We are more and more developing like preventing drugs, a drug that you get so that you take so that you don't develop a disease like for diabetes or something like that. In practice, patients do not want to, not even patient, normal person doesn't want to get it because he doesn't have the disease. And we are wasting a lot of money and time on this type of trial. And if patients and people were more involved from the beginning, it would avoid this kind of things. And they are also very, very good in enhancing patient recruitment in clinical trials. And this is a big problem usually when you run a clinical trials, and in communicating the results to the outside world. So yes, we have more and more patients at the heart of our policies. But in practice, what did we fund in pain research? Here you have a graph of what we have funded from 2007 till 2017. So we have put some 168 million, so about 17 million every year on pain research. Most of it is collaborative research where you have many centers working on an idea, but also in frontier research and what we call training and mobility. Those projects, they have addressed acute and chronic pain, but also developed biomarkers, new type of imaging, new models and technology, early detection, and some of them also in clinical trials. I just want to give 2-3 examples very briefly. And here we have the dollar risk project. And I mentioned this one because it's a collaborative research project which perfectly exemplified the idea of personalized medicine. Indeed, what they're trying to do, they try to stratify patients based on the physiological and psychological factors. And the idea is that once you have better stratified the patient, you will be able to develop a risk model for neuropathic pain. Another 2 projects. The first one, Your Head Pain, is a project addressing migraines. And they try to identify pathways and biomarkers for the triggering and the chronification of migraine attacks. And I mentioned another one, which is NGN PET, where they try to identify, validate molecular targets so that they can develop new treatments. These are just examples so you can flavor a little bit the type of research that we finance. And I will also mention those cases because these are from the SME instrument that I mentioned in the second pillar. And I just want to mention that SMEs are very active in the field of pain. Many small SMEs are trying to develop there, and we have funded a few of them. And here you have some examples. The Lucy on patient monitoring for collecting biomarkers of pain and mood disorders, or implantable devices to reduce pain in need of repetitive vascular access. ICT data to allow monitoring and adjustment of the management of chronic pain, or transdermal delivery system to improve the quality of life of chronic pain patients. So these are just small SMEs that maybe have an idea on how to manage pain, and we are providing funds to them. We'll spend 2 or 3 slides on palliative care, which was not included in the pain portfolio that I mentioned before, but we have had a special emphasis on palliative care, mainly related to cancer. So we have had 28 million on that in the last 10 years. And what they address on top of acute and chronic pain is multidisciplinary care management, access to medication, or economic evaluation of investing in the quality of life. Again, 2 small examples to show that, at least in those cases, they do deliver. And I will mention the EPCRC project, so the European Palliative Care Research Collaborative. And there it was the first major EU collaborative research on palliative care. We started it's true, like 7-8 years ago on palliative care. They established an international classification system and biomarkers, and this work has provided the evidence and to the clinical guidelines on the use of opioids in cancer pain. And it's now with the European Association for Palliative Care. Another project is on also on opioid. In recent years, we have seen an increase of consumption of controlled medicine in developed countries. At European level, we have a strategy which aims at controlling the access to illicit drugs while ensuring access to prescribed controlled medicine. And the ATOM project, what they did is they assess this access in 12 member states, and they provided a recommendation to these 12 member states. And this recommendation was scanning legislation, the adequacy of education for the professionals in the area, the cultural set mind, and analyzing all this, they give specific recommendation to countries to improve the access to opioid in those countries. And this has led to the WHO guidelines ensuring balance in national policies on controlled substances. So these are the type of project that provides the evidence for policymakers to develop their policies. We also partner with the pharmaceutical industry through the Innovative Medicine. I will not say much about that because the next speaker, Elisabetta Vaudano, will speak about that, but just to mention that it's a partnership between the European Commission and the industry, and we provide half of the money, and the industry provides the other half. And they have worked on the pain research, but we will hear about that a bit later. And I will finish with 2 slides on policy activities that we're developing at European level. As you know, the digital single market is one of the 10th priorities of Juncker, so it's quite high on the European agenda. It was mentioned this morning by Mr. Seychelles. A communication on what we are planning to do for the digital transformation on health and care was issued, I think, mid-May 2017. So there the idea is how we can better use ICT in the healthcare system. And it goes back to how we can use real data, how we can share better the data across countries, etc., etc. We are also pursuing the personalized medicine agenda, and we will have a conference in October 2017. And there the idea is not only to structure personalized medicine in Europe, but partner also with other countries like in the United States, where they call it precision medicine, Canada, Australia, and advance the field of personalized medicine. We have some work on the health technology assessment at a European level, just to show if there is a new intervention, is it or not of better value of what is existing, because many times we have a new intervention, but the difference between what is existing is not that well established. And we are working on the European Open Science Cloud, as mentioned a bit earlier. And on 12th of June, we will have a big summit about that. And my last slide will be on what's coming next in the work program 2019 and 20. That's what we are trying to develop, so it's just a flavor. This will be public in October 2017. So again, personalized medicine, global health will be in the agenda. An emphasis on environment and health will be there. ICT for active and healthy aging, and also big data and trusted big data. Just some keywords that we will address: comorbidities, system approaches, microbiome, cohorts, and e-health will be some of the topics that we will address in those work programs. And with that, I would like to finish. Thank you very much.
Just before you leave the podium, Karim, we have a question which was passed to me from a member of the audience, asking if you could say a little bit more about the concept of the loan for some of the risky projects that may be proposed, and maybe use a couple of examples as to the types of projects, if you can, that might get funded by that mechanism.
Okay. There are two things. There are two things about that. One is a general scheme where we provide loans, and there it's not for those type of project. Another scheme which is a pilot and will probably be expanded. For the moment, is just for infectious diseases and vaccines, because we have seen that the industry is not investing enough in this area, and that's why we have taken it as an example. There we have I don't have the names now because it's not what I manage, but I don't know if I can provide it to anybody. We have had a few, I think about 10 projects like that were funded, where the risks are with the Commission. I don't have, maybe I can provide the website and the list of projects, but now what's going on is that we're evaluating the scheme and see if it's working well, and should we expand that. You know that now we are preparing the successor of Horizon 2020, which will come in 3 years, FP9 if you want, and we are evaluating all the options to scale up in the future programs or not, and this will be part of this assessment.
Perfect. Thank you very much.